His name is Jose Antonio Zorrilla. Those of us who speak Spanish would say Zorrilla. He is a Spanish ambassador who has worked diplomatically in many countries, including Georgia, by the way. And he's good enough to join us now. By the way, he's also a very prolific writer, and he's a thought leader. And it's my pleasure to now welcome him to the show. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Rick, for giving me the chance to explain a bit my points of view, which is a rare chance. But thank you.
There's a couple of things going on in the world that I think you as a European are going to respond to. But you know what? Since I finished with that last story about Israel, I thought I'd get your take on that. You know, as a journalist, and because I'm Latino or Hispano and grew up in the United States, I am indebted to CBS for helping to put me through school. But the idea that they would not defend one of their own employees shot by the IDF, and by coincidence, they now happen to be owned by, you know, Zionist billionaires in the United States. That's unsettling, isn't it? That does not speak well of where we are in this world when it comes to journalism anymore.
Well, it's unfair, and it is a blatant lack of loyalty to one of your employees. I find it unacceptable. Besides, I find it unacceptable that the journalist, for the simple fact of being a journalist, may be killed. So it's doubly unacceptable, you know.
Yeah, and it's funny, but you know, it almost seems like we're living in an era where the journalists and the institutions of journalism that we used to pride ourselves on in the West, for example, in the United States, in Spain, in other European countries, they don't seem to be covering the stories fully anymore. They cover stories almost with a point of view.
Well, Rick, I don't know, because most of what I read are magazines on international relations, daily news, not so much. So I am not an expert on journalistic affairs like you are, but it is self-evident that the quality of journalism is not what it used to be. I remember the good old days of the El País, which is the journal of reference in Spain, and you know, look like like Encyclopedia Britannica all the time. Right now, it's, you know, like a leaflet of the university in the 60s, you know, practically. It is, you know, it's not the same. The downgrading has been considerable. And I think the United States is the worst profession of all, including the political class. Even beneath the political class, the lowest of the lowest are the journalists.
But no, I agree. Which is, by the way, why I'm here and no longer there. Though, as you know, I worked in all the big institutions there. I worked at CNN and Fox and NBC and Univision. And I got to tell you, they're just not what they used to be. Let's switch to your expertise, which is geopolitics with an emphasis on Europe. You're a European. You're in Spain.
I am.
What last week had to be one of the worst weeks in the history of Europe. They were revealed as, in many ways, I don't know, conflictive, weak, powerless, infighting, embarrassing in many ways. What the hell happened?
I think powerless is a very good word. Remember, Rick, we are a defeated continent. The United States won the war, and we have to follow. This is what is taking place right now. And there is, of course, and there is not a single voice in Europe. There are 27 different voices. You can imagine. It's like a joke, you know. But it's true that even though all this is bad in itself, you know, the worst of all is that we fight against our most profound interests. This is what I cannot understand. I cannot understand how the United States decided to break the knot between Germany and Russia, and Germany didn't say anything, you know, or France, by the way. They were all delighted to accept it. It's crazy, you know. Well, they have spent the past 4 years in a state of ruin.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
mean Nord Stream? Nord Stream.
Not
They
only
they
Not only Nord Stream, all the rest, the war, unnecessary war, everything.
yeah.
It goes against the interest of the continent, and yet everybody is enthusiastically supporting all this. To me, this is a mystery. It's a clear case
Well,
of
it's interesting.
it's
It's interesting the
incomprehensible.
way me fascina the way you just put that, right? I'm fascinated the way you just put that because what you said is the United States got the Europeans to go along with this whole Ukraine fiasco with the coup in Ukraine and everything else that's happened in Ukraine, essentially to try and goat or get it or to weaken Russia. And the Europeans go, okay, let's go, let's go. We're in, we're in, we're in. Now a new president, Mr. Trump, comes in and says, I'm not sure that is what we Americans want anymore. And now the Europeans are like, well, what do we do? We already said yes. Now do we say no? It's like they twist in the wind. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Un
I
papalote,
know,
like a
I know what
kite.
you, I know what you meant. I know what you mean, and definitely you are right. It's crazy. How on earth they decided to go behind this absurd strategy? To bleed Russia. Why? It's just absurd. But I understand in the case of the United States is delusional. They want to win where Napoleon and Hitler didn't were not able to win. So they were determined. But the case of Germany, with all the experience that these guys have in international relations, very specifically with Russia. Remember Bismarck. When we were together, we, Germany and Russia, it was good for our two countries and it was good for Europe.
Mhm.
Whenever by foreign intervention, he said, by foreign intervention, we broke this alliance, it was bad for our two countries and for Europe. With this legacy behind, how on earth they jump overboard, they jump, into the boat of the aggressivity towards or against Russia? That beats me. I can't understand.
Well, yeah, and there's also just a incredible hypocrisy that was on display last week when Mr. Trump started talking about taking over Greenland. They were appalled. They called it an act of colonialism. They called it an act of, Mr. Macron said that Mr. Trump was a bully. They said all kinds of things. But yet they never said these things when the United States did the same thing in Iraq, in Syria,
Yeah,
in Libya, in
yeah,
Afghanistan, Vietnam. I
yeah,
mean, all those were fine. But you mess with an iceberg with 50 people on it, and now you've crossed the line. That
yeah,
seems so crazy and hypocritical.
yeah. Listen, Rick, listen. Not very many days ago, the number one of the armed forces of Denmark said, yes, we have some problems with Greenland and the United States, but the existential enemy of Denmark is Russia. Yeah, sounds like a joke, but it is true. Yes, it's true. Now, second, Carney, finally, Carney has
Yes.
spoken and said the truth, the horrible truth. The faithful Cordelia, the favorite daughter of King Lear, was not that faithful after all. She pretended. Canada pretended. Canada turned a blind eye to the cruelties and crimes of the United States somewhere else in the hope that that would prevent the United States from treating them as they were treating Chile, Grenada, Panama, Vietnam, and they discover that after all they are going to be treated exactly like the others on the menu. They are on the menu. They expected to be on the table, but in fact they are on the menu. You see, Rick, the line, very thin line. There's a very thin line between loyalty and infamy, and they cross it.
Do you believe Mr. Trump is right when he argues that he doesn't need Europe and that Europe has basically getting away with U.S. protection for too long without giving back enough? Do you
Now,
buy that argument?
well, the big question is not that. The big question is from whom do we have to protect ourselves?
Yeah.
Where is it? Where is the danger? Why do we have to
Yeah.
spend such an incredible amount of money? Who is
Yes.
threatening us? Please, Rick, clarify the situation for me because I can't understand. Where is the existential enemy of Europe? It's incomprehensible. I don't
Do, do,
really.
do you not fear, as a Spaniard, that any day now Russian paratroopers are going to land in Madrid and take over Spain? Do you not fear that?
Well, I'm too old to expect. I'm I'm too old, to expect that they fall. The feminine legion of the Russians because they would conquer everything in 24 hours. But I'm too old. I'm happily married. But no, I'm not afraid of seeing anybody. I wish all the Russians come to Spain as tourists and enjoy la vida loca among us. We are very good at that in Spain, living la vida loca. It's a national specialty. And I hope they come here, yeah, and enjoy their life. And of course, we rely historically on the United States to defend us from the Soviet Union. But the Soviet Union is no longer there. I
Yeah.
don't understand. It's incomprehensible. And
It's
when
funny. Russians love Spain.
yeah, we
Russians
love Russia.
love Spain.
Well, we love
Um,
we love Russia too. And it has to be clear. We have nothing against Russia, but considering what he says, Trump, that Europe is irrelevant. Well, let me tell you, the turnover between the United States and Europe is more or less equal. It's more or less the same, and the addition of the two equals 30% of all the turnover in the global world. So to say that Europe doesn't play any role in the life of the United States is a joke. We have basically the turnover is the same one way or the other way. So
well, I got to tell you, there's something that people don't talk about. I was talking to a dear friend of mine in Mexico City a week ago, and he mentioned this to me, and I think he's right. He said, "Remember, Rick, you have to also understand that when Trump says that Europe has not paid enough for the defense and for NATO, he might have a point that the United States has paid more than Europe has paid. Okay, but what does the United States get for that? The United States has had an agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, since World War II, where, yes, we will provide your defense, and in exchange, you let us put military bases in your countries, you use our currency, you use our banking systems, you use all of our monetary systems to propel the United States as the leading economy in the world. And in exchange, we'll help protect you. That's kind of the agreement that they've made, but nobody talks about that.
well, Rick, you are talking about the agreement right now. That's the truth. That's the truth. The naked truth. You have just said, you have just touched the gist of the problem. The price of all this is submission. They command, we obey. This is the story.
But why don't European officials, the Starmers and the Macrons and the Merces and the Ursulas and all of these people who seem, I mean, I'm sorry for saying this, but they just seem really weak to me. Why I just said that. Why don't they say that? Why don't they stand up and say, but wait a minute. Yeah, you want us to pay, but let me tell you what we have paid with. I don't hear them making solid, frank, man-like arguments anymore.
I agree with you, but believe me, this is not a question of being weak. Weak is a word employed, generally speaking, in the Trumpian world. It's not weak, it's incompetence. They are incompetent. That's the question. All these affairs, all these questions are well beyond the intellectual horizon of these people. They simply don't understand the slightest idea of what they are doing or what they should be doing. Remember, Callas, not long ago, say the head of the diplomatic service of the European Union, so to speak, she said it's a good idea that Russia loses the war, because then we can split it in 2 or 3 smaller units. Don't smile. This is super serious. A diplomat cannot say this. An ambassador is not supposed to say this. And besides, the other day, she was very surprised. What? China? The Second World War? Was she there? Huh? Really?
Kaya Kallas.
Yeah, this is the one. This is the one in charge of the international affairs of the European Union. By the way, she is not received neither in Washington nor in Moscow.
Are you concerned about the Iran situation and the possible escalation there, given that Mr. Trump has announced he is sending an armada? You're Spanish. You know a little bit about armadas.
Well, Armada in English-speaking world looks like something threatening and terrible, but Armada is the technical name of the Navy. So today, in the Armed Forces of Spain, the Navy is called the Armada. The technical name of the Navy is Armada. But of course, the connotations in English-speaking world are different for obvious reasons. But when it comes to Iran, quite frankly, I don't know what to think because the United States has sent one carrier to Iran, well, to the Indic Zone, and Israel, not mentioned, but very important, has is opening bases in Somaliland to hit the Houthis, to attack the Houthis. This is an unwelcome development because it means another front of war. Now, are they going to attack Iran? Are they not going to attack Iran? I think, it's impossible to know. For me, it is impossible to know. I don't know. I'm sorry, Rick, I cannot give you an opinion.
Well, let me tell you what I know, and you tell me what your reaction is to it. On this program, when I was talking to a spokesperson for the Iranians, he told me that if the United States hit us this time, we will not hit Israel. We will hit the Persian Gulf, and we will block the oil flow in that area. How important is that, and what kind of damage do you think that could do to global markets, Mr. Ambassador?
A lot. That is the critical factor. This is why the Houthis, which are practically nothing, they're a tiny minority, Shia, but very small, are so important because they can practically. It's a choke point in world affairs and critical for the transit of oil. And if they are able to definitely choke it completely, the situation for the markets is going to be difficult. To begin with, there will be a surge in the oil prices. It wouldn't be good for anybody. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But it's a good strategy. Well, from the point of view of Iran, it's a good strategy. Besides, what the West or the United States doesn't have is a political alternative. So okay, there is a regime change. They oust the Ayatollahs, and then what? Then what?
Yeah.
What do they put in place? Because the Shah is like a joke, This guy, he's been shown praying praying in the Wailing Wall and with a kippah. So if you think this is going to be the next president of Iran, you are in for a surprise. Quite frankly, I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen either. Hey, talk to me about what your neighbors and your family members say. When you talk to people, I didn't grow up in Spain. I grew up in Miami, which is a little bit like Spain. But in America, what do people in Spain say about these situations that are going on? The war in Ukraine, the situation with Greenland, the seeming collapse of both EU and NATO these days. Do they fear it? Do they, what is the thinking in España?
What is the thinking in Spain? Well, the official Spain is very much like France or Germany. The Russians are bad because they invaded an innocent little country,
Yeah.
Ukraine. Yeah. Well, everybody, well, officially, I am a kind of renegade. And people think that I am under the sway of Putin and paid by him or the secret services of Russia, including my own family. A different thing altogether is the professionals. Professionals are a different story. They may not say that in public, but definitely in private, having lunch and the like, they all think like me.
Hmm.
That's,
And my bro-
that's the
you,
truth.
so, and these are people who are thought leaders. These are so the people inside European countries like Spain, the people who read, who digest information, like from people like Jeffrey Sachs and John Mearsheimer and others. They know the truth.
No,
The,
absolutely. Absolutely. And when having lunch, they agree with you. Then they take up to the forefront and speak and say absolutely the opposite.
why? What is so hard about saying no? What they're telling you is not true. There's a reason why Russia invaded, and it had to do with a provocation that was caused by such and such. But even if you don't believe that, suppose you don't believe that, but you believe another story. No, China is not completely crazy communist trying to take over the world. No, I mean, you know what I mean? No, Iraq was not developing nuclear weapons to destroy the world. These narratives, what's so hard about calling them out in Europe?
Well, it's a very good question, but I have a YouTube channel where I try to speak out the truth, and I'm afraid without much success. There are, of course, the chosen and the professionals who have very clear ideas, but they can
Mm.
pay. They can pay their, if they are able, if they dare to speak out the truth, they can pay this very, very dearly with their careers. And in fact, I have advised some friends of mine to stay apart from me because I don't want to cause them any trouble.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens in America too. If you
Ah,
say the wrong thing,
here you
yeah,
are.
I'm an example of it. If you say the wrong thing, they could destroy your career, take away your job.
Yeah.
And now as a human being, you feel like, well, I don't want to affect my family. I don't want my wife and my children need to eat. And if I can't be a journalist because I disagreed with, Israel's policies, that's crazy, but it happens. And it happens a lot, unfortunately. What a delight. Mr. Ambassador, thank you, sir, for taking time to take us through this conversation, for your insight, your very keen insight on what's going on in the world right now. Thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Rick. Anytime.